Welcome to episode 273 of School Librarians United. I am your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian finishing my 17th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast says something for you. You don't want to miss our next book club. Jarred Amato, creator of Project Lit, has a newly released book. Just read it, Unlocking the Magic of Independent Reading in Middle and High School Classrooms. See the link in today's show notes for the instructions and 14 questions from which you can choose to focus your response. You are invited to send in your voice message response no later than May 31st. This upcoming episode, it will be a compilation of comments, reflections, and strategies we can enact in our library programming and spaces today. Check out the link in today's show notes and be a part of this collaboration. Amanda Jones's upcoming book, That Librarian, will be available starting on August 27th, but you can pre-order your copy now. And if you use the indie bookseller Cavalier House in Amanda Jones's hometown of Denham Springs, Louisiana, you will get a signed copy. I've included a link in today's show notes. When you look at the cover of Amanda's book, you might recognize the Freedom Fighter shirt that she's wearing. She reached out to the designer, Christy, who then designed a line of That Librarian apparel, as well as That Librarian flair, such as a bag, sticker, and mug. I love that we can all be that librarian who advocates for our library and our students' access to books every day. You'll find a link to this online store in our show notes. Please know that 15% of the proceeds goes to the Texas Library Association, as that is the home state of the designer. Summer in the States is fast approaching, and if your district allows you to have some say in how you earn your professional development credits over the summer, consider using this podcast. In every episode, you'll find a link to Editable PD Certificate and what administrator would turn away free, customizable, and convenient PD hours. I've talked to school librarians who are permitted to choose episodes which address specific goals and areas which support their program. Some districts use Google Forms or some similar form of record keeping, so ask your administrator. You might be pleasantly surprised. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me either on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter, and on Blue Sky at SLU Podcast, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. And now a word from our sponsor, Capstone. Capstone is an innovative publisher and education technology provider of children's content for school libraries, classrooms, and at-home learning. Home of the award-winning PebbleGo research database, Capstone has a passion for creating inspired learning and intellectual curiosity in children, and I'm so excited to be working with them. I'm also grateful to Capstone for their continued commitment to support the podcast in Season 6. They are offering listeners of School Librarians United a very special discount. Visit shop.capstonepub.com and use the code UNITED to get $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and Capstone interactive ebooks. That's code UNITED for $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and ebooks on shop.capstonepub.com. And now for today's episode, Supporting Our College Bound, and my conversation with Carrie Friday. Carrie Friday, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Friends, we are in for a treat. Carrie, this is your fourth time on the podcast. And friends, I've included links to Carrie's previous episodes. I encourage you to listen to all of them because she is an expert and is always willing to share. Episode 151, Purchasing Power, Episode 169, Passive Programming, and Episode 226, Library Love. You know, I love that you have always been willing to just step up and join the conversation when you have something to share.
Actually, it surprised me to see that this is the fourth time I've been on here. It didn't feel like it. But when I was looking through the show notes, I was like, wait, this is my fourth time? Now I'm a pro. So that's really exciting for me. I am happy to share what I learned.
the really important thing is when we learn something, we share it, and we don't claim to be experts. And anytime we share on the show, the hope is that our listeners are going to take what they learn, take a look at what you've done, and then enhance, apply it to their own circumstances. We all have different sort of forces pulling at us, and when we teach, we're working situationally with different populations, and we want to make sure that everybody who's tackling something like the topic today, supporting our college bound, has a starting point like Carrie has created and so generously shared. So, you're finishing your very first year at this brand new school. Would you introduce us and tell us a little bit about your library and the grades you serve and some of the programs that you offer?
Sure. So my name is Carrie Friday. I live in Central Florida, just south of the Kennedy Space Center. I have been teaching for 15 years. This is my 15th year. I've been in the library for 8 or 9 now, but this is my first year at Melbourne High School. I swapped from the middle school library to the high school library, and I had taught high school at the beginning of my career, but not in the library. I taught in the classroom, and so this is a little bit different. School I'm at is a large high school. We have almost 2,300 students, grades 9 through 12. We're an IB school with the diploma program and the career program, but we also offer AP courses for students and AP diplomas. We have dual enrollment for students through 2 different local colleges. Plus, we have career and technical programs and all kinds of things. So jumping in is really jumping in. There's a lot. It's not like diving into the kiddie pool. It's like diving into the depths of the ocean and hoping that somebody throws you a flotation device. And so it's a really big school, but one of the things that I really love about it is that it is my neighborhood school. My house is zoned for this school. My daughter goes to school here. She's in the IB program. She is finishing this week. We get out of school, and this is her, she's finishing up her sophomore year and will start her junior year. And then the year that she graduates, my younger daughter will come in here as a freshman. And so I'll get to be with both of my kiddos the whole time I'm here. And so that's really exciting.
So I love the fact that you bring to this job, this brand new job, a familiarity that is not because you're a librarian, but because you're a parent. And learning about this school has come first as a parent. And I think what's also fascinating, especially given the topic for today, supporting our college-bound students, this idea that really the only carryover from being a middle school librarian is, I'm assuming that middle school library had the MYP for the IB program. Did it or no?
So the middle school that I came from is not a feeder school for here. And I've spent almost my entire career working with low-income, high-need students. So most of the students that I've always worked with are at least 2 to 3 grades below grade level. They really struggle. They come from challenging family situations. And so this is a whole different ballgame for me. The school that I work at is 3 miles from the beach. Our free reduced lunch population is only around 30%, which is still 30% of these kids. But when you're used to it being 90%, it's very different.
Carrie, before we get into today's topic, we're going into interview season. And this past year, you made the move from middle school to high school. I know that you have really enjoyed working at your daughter's school. I follow you on social media. And friends, if you're not following Carrie, we'll make sure that you know how to do that by the end of our conversation. But, what can you share with us about the adjustment going from such a different environment, especially in grade level in middle school, going to a high school scenario? I mean, how did you, first of all, make yourself the most appealing candidate for this job, given that you didn't come from a high school background?
So I feel like I had a little bit of an advantage in that I knew the position was opening. And I knew at some point it would open. So I'd really been thinking through these ideas for high schools and what could happen, was sort of just waiting for the right spot to open. And then for almost a year before the position was open, I knew it was going to open. I knew that the former media specialist was going to retire. And so I was really thinking through, like, okay, if I could be in this space, what do I want to do? What are the needs? What could be really great for these kids in this population? And I got really lucky because I'm a mom of a student who was already here in the IB program. Once a month, we have an IB Booster Club parent meeting in the media center. So once a month, I was coming to these parent meetings and sitting in this room, and I'm scoping things out. And I'm looking, like, okay, let me look at the age of these books while nobody's in here. And let me look at this room. And I'm like sneaking photos of the space and hoping nobody sees me and thinks I'm being creepy so that I could go back and look at these pictures and really think through, like, if I could redesign this space, what would I do? Because it hadn't really been updated in almost 60 years. So there was a lot of work to be done. And so I knew that, like, just the thought of having this big project really excited me, whereas most people wouldn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. That was really exciting. And even though I'm in a pretty large district, we have over 70,000 students in our district. I have fortunately been able to build a reputation for myself because I work with a lot of other schools and librarians. I lead a lot of professional development, not just locally, but through the state and some national organizations. And so I really love to give our government communications department material to share when they need news stories, because we need some positive information out about libraries. And so it's kind of one of these things where, like, it gets really awkward because I meet people that are up at the district office and they go, oh, I know who you are. Oh, I know who you are, which is odd because I don't know who they are. But it helped because when I sent in my resume, my now principal told me he didn't need to see it. It didn't matter what was on there. But of course, I'm a super overachiever. And so I was like, I need you to look at it, and I need you to click on all the links to all the things. And not only did I send him a resume that was linked to different webinars that I've done and my Florida Power Library portfolio and all these different things, I also built this very ambitious 5-year plan. And I waited until the night before he could officially offer the position to anybody and sent it to him at like midnight. But he really loved it because the next day I was on campus as a mom at incoming freshman night. I was working the volleyball table, and all these different people on campus were like, I saw your plan. I saw your plan. Holy crap, do you think you can do all of that? I said, well, we're going to try. We'll see what happens. But yes, I think I can. I think that put me in a really good position. But I recognize that not everybody that's interviewing for a job has that sort of position or that opportunity. And so I wanted it to not matter what anybody said about me. I wanted my work to speak for itself. And so I sent him more than he could ever look at. So he would feel like, this is a lot. If she can do all these things, then I'm sure she can probably handle this. And it worked out in my favor.
Carrie, forgive me, but, I think the mistake would have been to not do those things and expect that as an invested parent in this school, that, of course, automatically you would get the job. I think that's where you could have really misstepped because, a lot of folks would assume, oh, sure, if your kid goes to that school, obviously you care about that school, you're going to work really hard. But you came at it from a position of, I need to still provide ample evidence to give this person a reason to believe I'm a very capable person of doing the job that they're asking me to do.
And this is a school that everybody in the county wants to work here. Everybody. Always. All the time. They wait and wait for positions. They hope, they beg, they try to use all the connections that they have to get. So I knew a lot of people would apply for this position, and some people would have high school experience and some people wouldn't. I didn't have high school library experience. I had high school teaching experience, and I had done my homework. So I had been talking to people all over the country. I called you and was bouncing ideas off of you and several other people that I knew to try to make sure what I was thinking could be done. Or, I would ask people like, tell me if I am really far off the base here. And so I had done my homework. I had researched really successful high school programs. I'd put together a plan, and I wanted them to know that even though I might not have the experience in this space, that I could do the job.
Absolutely. Friends, today's episode, Supporting Our College Bound, is very much a window into this new job that you have been working at the high school and a unique to a high school setting, and also the inspiration for today's conversation. Can you give us an idea of how you got to the place where this was the episode you wanted to record?
So at my previous school that I was at, my principal, who's still a good friend of mine, is incredible and super knowledgeable. And she would talk to me a lot because her daughter is in the IB program here, but she's a grade ahead of my daughter. And so she would talk to me about all these college things. And she's like, oh, don't you know? Like, they need to be in a summer program. They need to be doing this and they need to. And I just I would just look at her and be jumped there. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you just apply and you get in and you go. And she's like, oh, no, it's not like that. And so over the summer, I started kind of doing a little bit of research and like, okay, well, let's see what she's talking about. And then I'm really lucky in that I have interns, 3 to 4 of them every class period, that are seniors. So my first semester of school here, I'm watching all of these kids who are in the IB program, or they're dual enrolled, or they're AP, or they're in a career program, or whatever. I'm watching them go through this process where they're filling out the Common App, and they're doing all these different applications for these different schools, and they're taking their transcript and inputting it in, and they're checking their portals, and they're doing this, and we've got decision dates, and I'm entirely too invested in these kids' lives. And so I had all the dates for all the schools they applied to written down on my calendar, and I'm like, okay, which one are we worried about now? Okay, what are we waiting for? You have to tell me if you got in. Like, I'm going to be so nervous for you. And so I really started watching, and as they're throwing out all these acronyms and they're saying all these things, I had no idea what they were talking about, which made me feel really ignorant and unprepared for my job. So I started doing some digging, and I got in all of these. I got in a lot of Facebook groups that I like to call helicopter mom groups. I'm not one, but they know everything. They know everything. So I would just lurk and I would read, and when somebody would mention something I didn't know, I'd read through all the comments until they explained it to somebody or somebody explained it to them, and then I'd start looking stuff up, and then I started reading books. The more I learned, the more I became utterly fascinated by all of this. And so it's really twofold for me, because I'm learning all this because I'm going to have to do it soon with my daughter. But also, it helps me to help these kiddos. So then as I started kind of getting an understanding of what the process looks like now, because it's way different than it was when I applied for school, I started looking for resources that were available for how do media specialists or school librarians support this process. And there is literally nothing anywhere. It cannot be found. I have looked and looked and looked, and finally I got frustrated, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start looking at this stuff that's made for college counselors and for people who are, their job is that people pay them to work on applications for their students. And I'm just going to start looking at all this stuff that's available for them and see what I can do to help these kids. And so that's really sort of where this came from, because there was just so much that I didn't know. I didn't know about the Common App. I didn't know that there's more than one essay. I didn't know that their activities list shouldn't just be the list of their activities. There needs to be an explanation, and they have 150 characters. And there was just so much that I didn't know. And I want to be able to help these kids in any way that I can.
Well, I love that you sort of cross over several groups, because as a concerned parent, you are a school librarian, you are a team member with the other professionals in your school. And so you are assuming the responsibility of it's multifaceted. And what I also hear is, as with so many things, especially when it comes to what we prioritize, is we learn things on behalf of others because we see an opportunity to be able to make those positive impacts on our school community writ large. I look at how we are going to look into ways we can support our students, the immediate beneficiaries of all of this, but also their parents, because their parents are indirectly going to benefit from the supports that you provide them, but also recognizing that you're a partner in your sort of the counselors and the team of counselors who obviously have taken a more traditional role in this process. But as somebody who has an opportunity to work with all of these groups, you see an opportunity for school librarians to also lend a hand in this process because there's so much involved.
Well, and so what's interesting is at our school, we have a phenomenal counselor team, but each of our counselors have a caseload of over 500 students. And then we have one counselor that is the college and career person. And the majority of her time for her job is taken up with our dual enrollment students. So she does an amazing job. She's incredible, and she wants to do whatever she can to help these kids. But she's only one person. So if I can come alongside her and support, then that's what I want to do.
Well, and forgive me, but, it almost seems like in today's day and age, you need to have two people doing that job, one person doing the career path and one person doing the college path. We had over 20 schools in 6 weeks come to our school, and it was a real busy time for all of us to make sure that these students had an opportunity to go and visit these, representatives who are coming in from these schools. But by the same token, you also have that career path. But I love that you have found a way to participate in this process and support everybody. So let's start first and foremost with the students and what they are doing, because you see them on a day-to-day basis. How about it with those essay writing?
A lot of what I sort of started with was talking a lot to my interns and the kids that are in here all the time. And as they're doing their applications and they're getting in and they're getting acceptances or they're getting waitlisted or whatever else, I would ask them, do you mind? Could I read your essay? Could I look at it? Could I see what it looks like? And they were like, yeah, I'll send it to you. Yeah, I'll send it to you. So I started reading the essays of the students that were in here just so I could have an idea of what it looks like. And then I read this really amazing book by Ethan Sawyer, who is better known as the college essay guy. He has literally he calls it a treasure trove. That's what it is, of resources for students that are free. But he has a great book that I read, and I started putting all these tabs and sticky notes and highlights in it that walks you through the process step by step, and it does all of these really great brainstorming activities. And so I was looking at these kids' essays, and then sometimes I'd be like, so you don't have to change it, but have you thought about putting this in there? Or have you thought about that? And so I just helped a little bit with that. I started tracking kind of our kiddos and the schools that they were applying for. And fun fact, our 3 major state schools, the University of Florida has an acceptance rate this year of 23%. Florida State University's acceptance rate this year was 21.8%. And UCF, which is where a lot of our kids kind of bank on going to school because it's only about an hour from here, they're only 41% at acceptance rate. And anything I've learned, anything under 50% is considered selective. So you've got the 3 major schools here that are public universities, and a lot of our kids can't get in. And it's not because they're not smart and they're not great. And even our super high flyers, they're getting in for a summer session because they're not high enough for the fall session. I didn't even know that was a thing. So now I'm watching and I'm learning and I'm reading and I'm looking at all these admission statistics. And then I'm thinking in my head, okay, so of all the kids that got into the school, how many of them were IB? How many of them were dual enrollment? How many of them did this? How many of them were a la carte? Okay, if this kid didn't get in, I wonder if it was their essay. Did they do all the optional things that apparently are not really optional? Did they do this? Did they do that? Well, they got in at Clemson and they got in at Georgia, but they didn't get in here. And so really just sort of watching the process unfold and asking them 1 million questions. Like I would tell them, I'm like, I know I'm really getting on your nerves, but I'm so curious. Like, can you just explain this to me? And so we would talk about the differences between early admission and early action and early decision and early action versus regular decision and whatever else. And so like all these terms I was learning and trying to figure out, okay. And then I would ask these kids, when you did your college visits, like when did you go look at schools? Were you in 10th grade? Were you 11th grade? Did you go this year? What did you look at while you were there? What did you want to do? And so I started looking online. And so I just started building resources for these kids. I've been digging into what needs to go in their essays and their applications. I've been buying all the books that I can find that are good, whether they are for their application or it's for test prep to help with their scores, online resources. I pay for a resource through Gale that's called Peterson's Test Prep that is phenomenal. And it's great for kids who are taking the ASVAB test for military, the GRE, like anything. It's got all these great resources in it. Plus, it's got a lot of really cool tools about colleges in there. And so I've been trying to make sure that that's not the best kept secret in the school, that we have access to that. And I built this resource that we're going to put in the show notes that's a college visit checklist. And I went through and I looked all over the internet and I found the best things that I could find and like piecemealed it together of all the places that they need to see and then how they would rate it and any thoughts that they had. And then I built a page that's questions to ask. And these are all things that can't be Googled, so you won't look stupid when you ask them. And so questions you should ask your tour guide, things you should ask admissions officers, things you might ask somebody in your intended major or department that just give you some good information. And then I built a page for the parents that has where they can go and put in all the information about the admissions rates and the tuition costs and room and board and how these colleges rank things. Like some schools rank things higher than others. My husband and I both graduated from Auburn University, and my daughter is interested in that. They don't read your essays. They don't want your essay. They only look at test scores and your GPA and the rigor that was available versus what you took. So, and they don't do legacy anymore. That's something you should know. Like, why are you going to spend all this time writing an essay about why you want to go to Auburn when they're not going to read an essay about why you want to go to Auburn? And so that kind of helps you plan and save your time. And then just like a reflection page and a place for them to put contact information for people that they meet. And we're going to get these printed and bound and give them, like, put them in the college and career counseling office for students to have to take if they want to. And there's a digital version of it available on the new school website so that they can screenshot it and have it on their phones. And we did 2 college visits with my daughter this spring. And I test drove the document because I wanted to see, like, is this stupid? Is this going to be used? Is this something that's a valuable tool? Does it need to be changed? And so we actually flew out to Texas over spring break and spent 3 days on campus of one school. And I pulled up the pages and I screenshotted it and sent it to everybody in the family. And I was like, okay, my husband, these are your questions that you're going to ask. And daughter, these are the questions you're going to ask. And I'm going to ask these ones. And even my little one, who is 12, had some questions assigned to her to ask. You know, like, everybody was covered. Because I wanted to know, like, are these good questions? And how do people respond when you ask them? And it worked out pretty great. And she didn't actually fill out any of this stuff when we were touring. But it was nice to know what to look at and what to think about as you're kind of looking around. So I've built some things to kind of help these kids, and they can use it or not use it. I think the biggest obstacle will be making sure that families know that they're available.
Well, and Carrie, what I'm hoping is that in the years to come, your team of school counselors includes you in those information nights. And because you are a resource, and you are somebody who sees opportunities to then share that information with people who would benefit from it directly. I love that you mentioned books, and I love that you mentioned the website. So question, first of all, have you ever seen, and this has worked for me, if you are putting books into the collection which support, in this case, career and college, you have the opportunity to draw on somebody else's budget. And so those resources were paid out of somebody else's budget, but we house the books. And so the career books are in a special collection in the Learning Commons, and our like our AP books and our, those types of books, we have been able to use somebody else's budget to pay for, but they're housed with us. They're part of our collection.
Yeah, our career counselor told me, she's like, just give me a list and I've got money. We can get what you need. And so this year I actually used some of my budget to do it because I'm on our state award committee. So I have all of these books coming from the publishers that are fiction books to go into the collection. And so I wanted to buy stuff. I didn't want to buy a lot of copies of things before I knew if it was worth having and if kids would use them. But one of the things that I've learned this year is that for test prep books like SAT and ACT and PSAT, our kids do not want digital tools to help them, which is hilarious because these tests are digital now. They want the workbooks, and these kids will check out a workbook from 2016 before they will go to a website to get something that is more current. And so that was a good lesson I learned this year is, okay, so next year I'm going to use their funds to buy test prep materials for these kids so that we have extras available so that, as PSAT comes up or SAT or ACT, we have plenty available for kids since this is what they want.
Well, Carrie, we have, I was noticing, I was going through some of my teachers' classrooms, and you always have you're always like, I always love checking out teachers' rooms because it's such a window into what it must be like to be a student in their classroom. And I noticed, especially with my AP teachers, that they had back issues of those AP study guides, and they were very dated. And so when I had some ESSER funds, as did some of us when sort of post-pandemic, we had some ESSER funds to spend, and we had to do it quickly. And so I reached out to my AP teachers and said, hey, I'm going to buy 5 of everything here. Tell me if you have a preference, whether it's the Princeton or it's the Barron's, or does anybody have a favorite flavor of AP prep test booklets? And it was fun because I had those in, we don't have a reference collection anymore, but we do have these test prep books, and I put them in a very obvious place where a lot of students would see them. And then I took a sort of a screenshot. I had that collection that I then sent the link to all my AP teachers and said, hey, we have all these test prep books. I put it on the the marquee, the scrolling marquee that our students all see on those monitors in the hallway. And so I had students who would come in and say, Mrs. Herman, I saw on the screen that you have this book. And I'm like, I absolutely do. And there's a little sticker, I will say, friends, on the front of these books that say 3-week limit if anyone's waiting. So when we check those books out to the students, the expectation is that if we run into a situation where they've had them for, months, we're going to call them back if somebody's waiting for them. But we did really well. And there was also a little sticker on there that said, please don't write in these books. Use scratch paper. Use scratch paper and take advantage of the digital resources that they have in there as well. And everybody was very grateful. I know our public library's copies were checked out all year. My kids would never have been able to get those public library copies. I think it makes a lot of sense to also dedicate some space on your library or Learning Commons website to these resources for our students and their families to find as well.
Every school in our district is getting a new website. I became the webmaster for our new website. Yayzings! It actually was really fun. It was so fun. I have had the best time, but I loved it because I'm the one behind the wheel driving the content and where everything goes. I've been able to put all kinds of treasures on there. Like, did you know that every school has a school profile that gets sent to colleges when these kids apply that tells them everything they need to know about your school? and it should be viewable on the website. Well, I didn't know that existed. And so I had talked to our IB coordinator about it earlier in the year because I saw something about it in a book, and I asked her and she sent it to me, and I read it and I was like, man, our school sounds awesome. And she's like, that's the point. So because I have that document, I put it on the website in like 3 different places. And then I put, that it was school profile 2023, 2024. So then I'll add the next one for next year beside it. So they have 2 years worth of information to look at should anyone go and look at that. But if families want to go see it to see what's being sent, they have access to it, and it's not that hard to find. And I made this resource when I was building the website. I made a resource that's called Modern High School Media Center College Bound Resources, and that'll go in the show notes. And I literally went through and I checked. We have access to Sora. And so I found all of our best books and put images and then linked those images and then all of our books. And then I went through like what's available on Destiny that's maybe not in Sora, but it's in Destiny. And then websites, our scholarship page that's on our website, which, pro tip, I learned when you're looking for scholarships, not only do you want to look for the local scholarships on your school's website, but also all the other schools in your area. So in the fall, I went through and looked at every website for every school in my district and then took all the best information and got it put on our website. So we had the most information and the best tools for our kids.
I noticed here you have a whole bunch of podcasts that you have also curated. You have here, I think we've got 17 different podcasts, which families and interested people can listen to learn about admissions and sort of get an edge on the application process. But again, I had no idea these were, you've put them all together for people to reference.
So I'm not actually a huge podcast person. I have 2 or 3 that I listen to. I always listen to this one. And then I've recently started listening to, there's a couple of these that are my favorites, but I know that a lot of people really love podcasts and they'll do that over a book all day long. My husband listens to, I don't know how many hours of podcasts a week, more hours than there are in a week, and he just bumps up the speed. For somebody like him, I can send him a link to an episode about something that I want him to know, and he will listen to it. But if I say, hey, will you read this book? He does not have time for that. He's too busy putting rockets in space. My favorite one on this list is the College Essay Guy. This guy, like I'm telling you, the website is amazing. The podcast is amazing. His books are amazing. It is the best tool. But there's one that's called the College Admissions Process Podcast. And I'm very fascinated by it because each episode, they interview an admissions officer from a different college. And that person tells you exactly what they're looking for and why they pick what they pick and what they don't want and kind of what they're looking for and why they do things the way that they do. And so you can go through and only listen to the ones that you're interested in. You can just pick the ones for your kid's school.
And this is what happens when you ask a librarian to do something. They are going to curate in such a way that you're not going to waste people's time. You're going to make sure you bring the best of these resources to a single place where people can look and reference this. I could imagine sharing this guide not only with my school and with the teachers, but also with the counselors and our career and college readiness counselor, who would then extrapolate from here the kinds of things that would be most relevant to our students here in Michigan. But some of this is absolutely applicable across the country and probably relevant in some respects outside of the United States as well.
So the only thing in here that's specific to Florida and not good for the general public is that, so the kids always say that parents are on Facebook and the kids are on Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. So I linked some Facebook groups that I found that are helpful. I'm sure there are 1 million more. And 2 of those are specific to Florida because in Florida, we have a Bright Future Scholarship where if students meet these criteria, they get full tuition for 4 years. Or if they don't meet that criteria, but they meet this criteria, they get 75%. And so there's a lot of questions that are about Florida schools and how selective they are and this process in summer and whatever. So I put those, but then I linked Instagram pages because that's where the kids are. So if they follow this, they're going to see that stuff. I even linked some TV shows in there. There's this really great show on Amazon Prime that's called The College Tour. That's how my daughter fell in love with one of the schools that she is really digging, is because of an episode that we watched. And there are all kinds of different schools, small and large, public, private, religious, not religious, everything you could imagine. There's a wide variety. I think there's 12 seasons, 13 seasons of it now, and each episode focuses on one specific school. And it is such a great resource. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can just watch it. And if you don't, you can go to their website and you can watch it.
The topic of college applications is something that is so sort of limited to, forgive me, the high school experience. It's entirely possible if you're like somebody like me who has my entire background as an elementary librarian and I come into the high school and all of a sudden this is something I need to educate myself about. So I'm very grateful that you've demonstrated your process of how you've educated yourself and then turned that into something that can benefit the groups of people who are going through this right now. Can you mention something a little bit about the book club that you had over the summer?
I will. I just want to throw in, though, so we think about the college admissions process and we think, okay, that's for high school kids, juniors, seniors, maybe some sophomores. But honest to goodness, you're starting your plan for your kid for college when you pick their middle school classes. Because are they taking algebra and geometry early? Are they taking their foreign languages early? If, like, my daughter took hers early because I knew she was going to be in the IB program and that was a prereq to get in. And so you're kind of choosing these paths. Are they going to do dual enrollment? Are they going to do IB? Are they going to take AP? How many APs are they going to take? And so if you don't know anything about this, you could just be driving along. And a lot of our families, I'm finding they're almost dumbfounded because they just assume that their kid will apply and go to FSU or UF because they went there and they have no idea that it's so hard to get into now. And they're like, wait, you mean my kid had to do all of these honors and advanced classes, or they needed to have a plan to go from this community college and transfer or whatever? They just don't know. They just don't know because it's so different. I decided to see if there was any interest, and I decided to offer a book club for this summer, and we're only going to meet 3 times, once a month. And I picked 2 options, Who Gets In and Why by Jeff Salingo, and then The College Admissions Essentials by Ethan Sawyer, my best friend. Just kidding. I don't know him, but I wish I did because he's super cool. He's the college essay guy. And so I sent out this flyer to every parent in our school through our software system, through Focus. And then I put it in our school newsletter and put it on Facebook. And I have had 54 parents sign up for it. So, and I let them pick. They could pick the blue book or the yellow book, or they could do both. And they are very excited about it. And because I feel like some of this stuff, you don't want to be so crazy about it when your kids are in 6th and 7th and 8th grade, but it's nice to have an idea of what's coming. And so I sent it out to our feeder middle schools and asked them to send it out to their 8th grade parents. Or if they want to send it out to everybody, send it out to everybody. That's fine with me. And so technically I offered it for our school community, but I made sure that everybody knew that anybody is welcome. I've got people from the district that are coming. Our head guidance counselor signed up for it. She's like, I want to read these books. I think it's going to be really fun. So I'm just going to sort of divide the book into thirds. And then we're going to meet once at the end of May, the last week of May, once in June, once in July. Hopefully we won't need to meet in August, but just for an hour or 2 in the evening, come or don't come, we'll talk about that segment of the book some. I'll answer what questions I know. I'll tell them when I don't know. And then my plan is to give them some resources that I have found each time. So like the first time we meet, I'm going to give them this college bound resource guide and say, here's all the things that I know where they are. I haven't read every single thing in here, but I've heard good things about them. These are my favorites. And then because I'm so fascinated by this, I'm sure I will find something else before the other 2 meetings, and then I'll share that. I'm doing that this summer. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm interested to see how it's going to go. And then the other thing I'm sort of working on, and kind of, our IB kids take this class that's called Theory of Knowledge. And in some schools, they take it the back half of junior year and the first half of senior year. But at our school, they take it all of junior year and all of senior year. And so they build in, because it's 2 extra semesters, they have time to work on their extended essay. They have time to work on their exhibition that they have to do, and they have time to do their college applications. So in the spring of junior year, they start working on their college essays, like their personal essay and the things that can be done. They get familiar with sort of what the Common App looks like. In the fall of their senior year, they're putting in, besides finishing their extended essays and getting those submitted, they're putting in all their essays. They're getting their recommendation letters taken care of. They're getting all their stuff done. Their FAFSA, usually this year it was apparently super duper late and is messing a lot of people up. But we're getting a new Theory of Knowledge teacher next year for junior year and maybe for senior year too. And they don't really know anything about college essays. And so I was like, you know what? This is a great chance, because I've been really digging deep into this. So you can bring your kids to me and I'll do the workshop with them from the books that I've read. And we'll work through this process to start building their essays. And then you know what a good essay is, so you can help them. So we're planning to partner together. And then once I've kind of done it with these TOK kids, my idea is to offer a summer. I don't know if I'm going to do like a couple of days or just a one long day workshop where anybody that wants to come and work on their personal essay or some other part of their college essay can come, and I will help you in all the ways that I can.
Wow. So, Carrie, can I ask you, because listeners are wondering this question, because I had it from a ways back. So when it comes to doing these book clubs, I appreciate you are obviously taking time out of your summer to meet with these families. How have you simplified the process by which they get the books? I assume that it is on the parents to get the book that they choose to read. And so really from a planning perspective, you sort of are orchestrating, when are they coming physically to the school to do this? So it's not a Zoom. This is like,
it's not a Zoom.
I love that, because then you are showcasing your space as the Learning Commons, or you call it a library. But this is another opportunity to raise the profile of the librarian and what you are doing to support them in their child's journey.
We get new furniture installed June 3rd. So I want these parents to have their booties on these brand new couches and these rocking chairs from the get-go. Like, I want them to see this is what, like, we're working hard to give your kids the best that we can, the best educational experience. So for the book club, I did this fun little thing where I only picked books I had already read, so that I didn't have to panic read something. I picked books that I had bought a couple of copies of for our library collection because I think they're really valuable. I had bought digital copies of them, so they're available through Sora. So I told the parents when I sent out, the email and said, so it's your responsibility to find a copy of this book, whether you read it, you listen to it, you do the Audible trial and listen to a free copy of it, or public library has them. I checked with several branches just to make sure that they had it. And I said, or if you cannot get this book, please let me know and I will make sure you have a copy. So that's not me telling everybody, hey, I have copies if you want mine. But those who really genuinely want to read it and can't, now I have copies that I can give them so that they are ready to be part of this, and I can just check it out to their student and then they can give it back to me. That way I know who has it.
It occurred to me a couple things. First of all, you said this furniture is brand new. It makes all the sense in the world because presumably a large part of what paid for this furniture are local tax dollars, your millage. I know when we get renovations in our space, that money is coming directly from the community whose tax dollars support our infrastructure. It makes so much sense to have those taxpayers in your space because they can see firsthand rather than getting, rather than hearing from their child, oh, I was in the Learning Commons today, or I was in the library today, and oh, we have new furniture. Nope, you're going to let the families are going to get to see those taxpayers are going to see their taxpayer dollars at work and feel better about the school in which their students spend so many hours of the day. I see this as a win for so many reasons. I am curious, can your parents access your digital resources, or would they be accessing them through their students?
They would access them through their students. Our parents don't have a way to do that, but their students have accounts. I heard this phrase. Actually, I heard it last night. I was listening to one of these college podcasts when I was going for a walk around the neighborhood. And there was this one guy that kept referring to parents as high-touch parents, like the people that are always constantly staying in touch and about their kids' applications and the whole process. And I thought that's a really great way to put it. It's not negative. It just means they're very involved. A lot of our parents are thinking, that their kids are going to be college bound. They are a little more higher touch. And so these are the parents who are checking their kids' grades regularly, and they know how their kid gets in and accesses things. And so that's not a stretch for them. But if I was doing this in the community that I was in before, I would do it a different way. I would have written a grant to get copies of this book ahead of time. But this was sort of just a harebrained idea that I had. And I was like, I wonder if anybody would come to this. Let's see. And I made a flyer in Canva, and 20 minutes later I sent it out. And then all of a sudden my Google form exploded. So that was exciting.
Let's talk about the working relationship you have with your counselors, because they are traditionally the ones we assume share most of this expectation that they are going to sort of usher our students from through this college application process. But I'd like to hear how you became integral to the team of counselors who are working on this, and how did you support your counselors this year in the college process?
Well, so it's a little bit tricky because I'm new to the school. So I don't know them and they don't know me, although a lot of people here know what they've heard about me. And so my joke going into the school year was, I hope I live up to the hype, because everybody was sort of talking about, oh, we've got this person. Oh, we've got this person. And so I wanted to be sure that, whatever it was that everybody was saying, that I was doing my best to be that person for them. But I didn't know our counselors. But this magical thing happened towards within the first week of school. I started letting kids in here at lunchtime. And this one kid was like, can we eat in here? I didn't really think anything about it. And I said, yeah, sure, whatever. And within 5 days of school, I had 400 kids in here at lunch, each lunch. So I have kids everywhere. And it is magical because they are so incredibly well behaved, and they're playing Uno, and they're working on homework, and they're just doing all this great stuff. And it's this really special thing where I see half the school in one day, whereas 1 year ago, you wouldn't get half the school in here in the entire year. And so because I had all the kids, when the counselors needed to distribute information, they were coming in and asking me if I could make announcements, if I could tell the kids. And so it was one of those oh, there's a college fair coming up. Well, how can I help with that? Oh, well, I could do this. Or, oh, well, I can, we can use this Promethean board, and I can, run the presentation, or I can set this thing up, or I can help with this. And so we started kind of running some of these college visits out of the media center. And I am from the deep, deep South. I grew up in Alabama. So I have these super hostessing skills that have been ingrained in me, And so I know how to just turn it on and be like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you're here. And, I'm like, having snacks for them and cold water and, all the little things. And so these college people are like, oh my gosh, when I come back next time, can I come back to this room with this lady? And so that helps kind of the counselor see like, oh, okay, so she can help. And so then the more they were in there, our college counselor specifically, I would talk to her and I was like, okay, so I'm trying to learn all the things about this. Did you know about this? Can you tell me what does that look like when our kids do that? Well, what does this look like? And so I would just pepper her with questions. And then we started talking about, oh, are you in this group? I'm in this group too. And so we kind of started sharing some things back and forth. And then now, like, we've kind of become almost like a power couple, the same way I am with our IB director. And so, like, I've just sort of wiggled my way in and I'm like, okay, I'm here. This is what I can do to help. And so, like, because of this, I found myself on the senior awards committee. Apparently, I'm an excellent party planner. And so these little things that people keep going, oh, I bet Carrie would be good at this. I say yes to, not because it's being forced on me, but because it's giving me an opportunity to build relationships with the people who know these things. And then I can learn from them. I can help them. I can come alongside them. We went on a visit to Baylor University with my daughter, and I was talking to her admissions counselor. And we have this enormous college fair here in the fall where big colleges from all over the country are here. And so I asked her, like, oh, do you ever travel to Florida? We have some schools, but I don't think I've ever seen Baylor there. And she said, I would love to come. I travel to Florida, but I haven't been able to find the information on how to get into these things. And I said, well, let me see what I can find out for you. So we came back. I asked our college and career counselor, and she's like, oh, well, that's not me. It's this person at the district. So I emailed that lady, and she's like, oh, they just have to do this. So I sent it to her. And then she's like, oh my gosh, this is great. And so I sent her like her profile and all the information. And like, if these dates don't work for your travel schedule, we have colleges that just come to the school all the time. So you let us know when you're coming. We can set that up. That's easy for you. Not because I'm trying to get my kid into a school, but because there are great opportunities. And I've heard other kids talking about the school. So now they have the chance to come and sit and listen. And all it took was 2 emails. Like that was easy.
I think what's absolutely vital, and I've learned this, I like many librarians, out of necessity, because the one time that you find that the one time that our space is used for an evening activity or something that involves a large number of people coming through that space, and you're not part of that planning, it is a problem. I have found that I would rather know ahead of time that somebody has sort of set their sights on having something held in it. I'll use the terminology for us as learning commons. I would rather be part of that planning process so that I can anticipate and be better prepared to have and host large numbers of people, whether or not I'm going to be involved in them coming actually at night, or I'm part of that pre-planning where I'm making sure that the space is ready for them during the school hours. But it stands to reason that as the person who is intimately familiar with what our space is capable of doing, that we should be part of that conversation. And we are best able to do that when we have some time to anticipate how our space can flex and support the number of people and the needs that they have. Finding out afterwards, it has really been frustrating to me if I find out, oh yeah, last night this group was here. I'm like, I would have liked to have known that, because there are some things I would have done differently to make sure that they were better to use the space in a way that supports them.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like, I had to explain to our administrators when I got here. Like, I know that the previous person worked differently, but when something happens in here and I don't know about it, then I can't set up for it properly. And if something goes badly, I'm the one that looks bad because it's my space. Whereas if I know something's happening, we had our incoming freshman night, and all of a sudden, like, it was going to be torrential downpours. And so we took everything that was going to be out in our courtyard and put all the clubs in the media center. And I pulled out these tablecloths that I had. I made everything look super nice, and I had all these activities out. And all these families that were coming through here were so impressed, and they thought everything looked great. And they're like, oh, this is really great. And well, we just did this while we're here too. And all because I was part of the plan. You know what I mean? And so I just really try to impress on them, like, I know that this space gets used for a lot of things, but I have to be kept in the loop or I will lose my mind. And so they've been pretty good about it so far. We had some kids in here this weekend that I didn't know would be in here. They were using the theater, and then a pipe burst, and we had no plumbing in here today until about 2:00. And like, I didn't know. Nobody told me. And so, like, those are the things that you walk in on Monday morning and you're like, oh, surprise, the toilets don't flush.
Our space is a reflection of us. And I want to be proud of this space. And I know that when the Board of Education is meeting in the Learning Commons in the evening, because it's our turn to host the Board of Education, I want to make sure that we are absolutely ready. Those tables are cleaned, the floors are cleaned. I want to make sure that if things are at all disheveled, that we've had a chance to sort of rearrange and anticipate groups. We have a brand new principal coming through. Where's this principal going to set up for the day to meet the staff? In the Learning Commons. I'm already planning on how this is going to happen and make sure that they're in a space that can support this visit. Carrie Friday, you are fantastic. I love the resources that you have created, because for anybody who is considering doing anything to support their students in their college search, you've given such a foundational set of documents that anybody could sort of move from. It's incredibly generous. I love the idea of all the things you've got planned moving forward. Carrie, I hope that you have some fun things planned for your summer, because your summer is coming up very quickly. How many more weeks do you have of the school year?
I have 4 days left. 4 days, and I am counting it down. Our seniors graduate on Wednesday, and then Friday is the last day of school.
Oh, Carrie, you are fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. Thank you for rallying. Here we are at the very last week of school for you. And would you please let listeners know, I love learning from you when you share on social media. Would you let listeners know where we can find you?
Absolutely. I am on Instagram. My username is super creative. It is my name, at Carrie Friday. Or you can follow our media center. It's at Melhigh Media Center, MELHIGH Media Center. And my daughter runs that account, and it is all things for kids. It's super fun. Really spotlights a lot of the things that are going on in our space. I'm also on Facebook, and I have X, formerly known as Twitter. I don't get on there that often, usually just when somebody tags me in something. I'm sort of kind of over it these days. I just don't have a lot of time to spend there because I'm spending it learning about college things. These documents will be in the show notes, and I love for people to email me. My email address is friday.carrie@Brevard, BREVARD, schools, SCHOOLS.org. or carriefriday@gmail.com. So if you want copies of these things that you can edit, one of them is a Google Doc that you can just make a copy of and adjust to your little heart's content. The other one I made in Canva, and I can share that with you as well, or whatever it is that I have. I'm always happy to share because I feel like we're better together.
Carrie Friday, have a fantastic summer, and I look forward to our paths crossing in the future.
Thank you. Me too.
Friends, if you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. A couple friendly reminders, friends. Use the code UNITED to take advantage of Capstone's generous $20 discount off an order of $100 or more. And I hope you will consider sending in your voice message and have your say on the next podcast episode. Visit the link in today's show notes. Don't forget to join us for our next book club episode when we read Jarred Amato's brand new book, Just Read It. See the link in today's show notes. The topic of our next episode will be middle school magic and my conversation with Maggie Hall. I hope you will tune in.